Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you all on this sunny Sunday. I'm Manasi, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Museum of Goa to yet another exciting MOG Sunday. We are pleased to have with us Deepti Naval. We all know her as a celebrated Indian actor who, through her sensitive and close to life portrayals, has emphasized the changing role of women in India. But very few know of her multifaceted personality. She's a director, painter, photographer, and writer. She has 4 books to her credit: Halakha, Black Wind and Other Poems, and the Mad Tibetan Stories from then and now. Today, we are here to talk about her recently launched memoir, The Country Called Childhood. We also have with us Sunanda Mehta. She's an author and a journalist. She has worked with Indian Express Pune, and she is the author of The Extraordinary Life and Death of Sunanda Pushkar. I would like to invite both of you on stage and request Sunanda Mehta to take us through the journey that led to the creation of this memoir. Over to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So of course, Deepti needs no introduction, either as an actor or as a poet, or as a painter, or now as an author. But I have to say, when I got to know about this book, and when I picked it up also for this talk, like a lot of people, I said, Deepti Naval is an actor. So if I had to read a book or a memoir about her, a kind of an autobiography, I would want to know about her life as an actor. Most of us, that's what our curiosity usually is. So why would she write about childhood? So let me go through it, but it was a little bit of trepidation when I picked up the book and I decided to read. I think I was just maybe 1/3 through the book when I actually closed it, and I just went back to many, many years of my own childhood. I think one of the most precious takeaways and the most precious gift this book will give to each of us is the fact that they make us not just relive our childhood, but realize how important are the small, small incidents that we all go through, but which we dismiss off as being inconsequential. We think, okay, they're childhood memories, but put together, they really are what has made us what we are today. They're the context of our personalities. So I would just say thank you so much for writing this book, because you have made childhood the most important aspect of all our lives by this book.
Thank you.
And I just love it. I could of course relate a lot to it because I also am from the north. So many phrases, good man Dilalatan. The little verse called Bauji Namaste, Chole Khausaste, Pani Piyo Chanda, Sachimara Danda. I was just enjoying and reliving these phrases which one had not forgotten. So the book is really precious, it's really valuable, and the way Deepti has written it with so much description, the details, right from the cobblers, the moche stand which she calls, to the mosque next to her house in Amritsar, to the people from the tailor to the nannies. It's a wonderful world that she has lived, and I really, really congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
So over to you. So while we have this conversation, we will do a bit of conversation, and I will request you to read something from her book, a couple of pages. Then we'll again come back to a bit of Q&A and conversation, and this is how we'll flow the entire session. So would you like to start?
Yeah, I can read
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Yeah, would you please?
I will read.
This is good.
Yeah. I'm just going to read the introduction, the preface of the book. Okay, now this is the prologue. It's called Dance of the Songs. This is my extremely, very, very first memory of my life. And I tried to recreate it the way I remember it. It's getting dark in the city of Amritsar. Shops are shutting down. Street lamps come on, casting dim yellow pools of light. Rickshaws and bicycles hustle to make their way home. A handcart loaded with gunny bags, wobbles down the street. Even Dwarka's kite shop is winding up. The old Sardar tailor pulls his rickety shutter down, gets on his bicycle, and pedals away. Shani's voice can be heard. She's urging her buffaloes home. Grubby little boys, the mochis, play outside in the gully, and behind the threshold of the phatak, the big iron gate, two little sisters, Bobby and Dolly, go about their lives. This scene seems like it's from hundreds of years ago, but it actually dates back to 1956. It's one of my earliest memories in which I am almost 4 years old. It's the street I remember the most, the street on which I lived. A little girl darts out of her house crying, "I want to go to my mama." "Come back," shouts my Sardi, my nanny, from inside the big gate. "No, I want to go to my mama." "Your mama has gone to the cinema, you get in here at once." "I will also go to the cinema," she retorts, and runs down the street. Suddenly, something stirs in the air. There's a muffled grunt in the sky and the breeze changes. The sky turns red. Tin sheds begin to flap and rattle. The smell of wind on earth. It's a dust storm. Stray pieces of paper littering the ground outside the bookbinder's shop fly up and float in the air. Bicycles fall in a slow, studied motion along the wall of the cinema hall. The wooden shutter of Gyan Halwai's shop tilts and slips out of its clamp. He stands with his arms outstretched, holding it with all his Malai Lassi strength against the wind, his lungi threatening to fly off. A rickshaw puller pedals backward and sideways. The world seems to slant at the edges. Dust storms the streets. My Sardi's voice cuts through the mayhem. "Stop, I say. Get back, girl. It's dark." The girl is not coming back. She runs all the way to the end of the street and suddenly finds herself in the middle of Katra Sher Singh Chowk, in front of Regent Talkies, surrounded by huge cinema posters. The posters begin to tear from the whiplash of the wind. Faces of actors and actresses fold up and slap against the dry whitewash of the decrepit cinema hall. Unable to keep her eyes open from the dust, wind, and tears, the little girl hides her face in her sleeve. At her feet swirl particles of dust, torn scraps of paper, bright orange and pink trimmings from the tailor's shop, and gather momentum. She stands still for a while, watching the little merry-go-round around her dotted rubber booties, until her eyes fall upon something. Across the street, the plotwala. Plotwalas, anybody knows? Pehle hote the plotwala. Huh? These were people who एक प्लॉट आता था, एक सीपिया कलर्ड लीफलेट्स, उसके ऊपर फिल्मों के गाने लिखे रहते थे, and the plot of the film, one page of that, and then all the songs, lyrics actually of the, और वो सिनेमा हॉल के बाहर बैठते थे ये प्लॉट वाले, तो हमारे यहाँ भी रीजन टॉकीज के बाहर, हाँ, even less, maybe few पैसा वो प्लॉट में थे. Across the street, the plotwala is doing a tandav. He is the skinny man who sells little leaflets with the plot and songs of Hindi films printed on them. A strong gust whisks away the sepia-colored leaflets from his hands and flings them into the wind. They soar in the air, going up and up in circles, dodging the poor man's attempts to retrieve them. Tossed into the wind, the yellowed sheets somersault, now diving to his feet, now rising as if to sudden applause. He leaps and plunges by the side of the road, slapping his arms around, hurling himself at the musical notes. One leaf slips into two and two into four, till the songs dance above his gaunt, lanky frame. He dances with the songs, the poor brother, trying in vain to hang on to his only means of livelihood as it slips away into grainy air. No one notices the little girl as she stands in the middle of the chalk, enthralled by the dance of songs. Her large eyes filled with tears, but she forgets to cry. Filled with tears, but she forgets to cry. There you are, Marjani. My Sardi steps forward, scoops me up in one sweeping movement, lodges me onto her hip, strides down the street, and puts me back inside the house where I belong. As we enter, my grandmother rises from her chair, pointing a finger at me. No little girls from good homes go out to cinemas on the street. Thank you. That is my first.
And of course, the book is full of incidents, which kind of finally link to why she chose cinema as a career. That time, of course, I'm sure she couldn't have possibly thought why these episodes are happening, but once you connect the dots, I think the whole picture becomes very clear. So how long did it take you to write this book? And how did you go about collecting this entire vast treasure house of memories and putting them on paper?
I've been jotting things down forever, actually. Ever since I left Amritsar, my father migrated to the US after my schooling and another year and a half in college, which is the prep and then half a year there. That was the time the family migrated to the US. And when I landed in America and I was going to school there, Hunter College, I started jotting things down from my memories of Amritsar. And randomly, ऐसे कुछ लिख के रख दिया, कहीं छोड़ दिया. Of course, I didn't have a laptop then, so it was like scribbled all over the place on notepads. Some of them I lost also, some of them I tried to recover again. And then, of course, just, sometimes just a one-liner, sometimes describing a scene the way I remembered it. So the work has started, it has been going on forever. But the first 4 chapters were written 20 years ago. 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, the Elbow Crusade was written then.
That's one of my favorite chapters.
Yeah, the Diwali night was written then. And of course, the Pak War was written in that time. But then, of course, one kept on, as you live your life, other things take over. You're not just writing, you don't have the luxury of just writing. So, a lot of notes, a lot of research also. When I wrote the first 4 chapters, I realized that I'm going to need to do a hell lot of work on this book. It's not just about the way I remember things. I also have to cross-check so many things, so many stories from my childhood, so many incidents. I have to cross-check. Bazaar walon ke paas jaake main बैठी. I asked the shopkeepers, आपको याद है ऐसे हुआ था ना, हम लोग ऐसे बच्चे थे भाग के ये करते थे, हाँ जी वो बिल्कुल याद है जी वो, I mean just cross-checking things so that I have the real picture. And my mind is not just the only thing I can trust. I just have the real scenario क्या था. So notes have come really handy in putting things down, in recalling, remembering. Sometimes I would just put down a page and a half, and then when I get to that chapter, and when I really, press my mind for details, everything just comes flowing out, and you feel, my God, you're surprised at how much you remember, because you have to take the mind there, and then you feel, oh God, ye bhi to tha, wo bhi to tha, and then it's endless, and then it starts pouring out, and then I've written like from a page and a half, I've written 15 pages of that chapter. So the work has been continuous over the years. But last 5 years, as when the publisher came into the picture, David Davidar read the first 4 chapters, and he called me first thing in the morning and he said, we are publishing, we're definitely publishing this book of yours. So I was happy. I said, 8:15 बजे refusal call करनी हो सकता
So amongst the many things that has struck me about this book, one is the honesty with which every episode, every incident has been narrated. I mean, there's no attempt at, there's no book on self-indulgence. It's one which is a lot of substance, a lot of sensitivity. So even if it means you've admitted to stealing your classmates' eraser and letting them to call over and and feeling sympathy that you can't find it, but it's in your own bag, and or 10 rupees you're taking to buy kites. So there's a lot of honesty in this entire narrative. And amongst them also is this one incident which was quite startling. I was just talking to her before the session started, and I want you to tell it in your own words. That coming from a very loving, very secure family with parents who doted on her, with a comfortable livelihood, everything she wanted was there. At 13 years of age, Deepti decided to run away from home, and she did. In a train by herself. I think we should really tell the people about this episode of her
I
life.
was hoping we'd finally get to it, but you brought it up.
Yeah, so I like to have not gone chronologically as what strikes.
Yeah, I ran away from home, and this is the only chapter that I was hesitant writing about because it is very stupid. I wanted to go to the mountains. I wanted to see Kashmir because by then we had seen every film that we saw. वो सारे गाने कश्मीर में पिक्चराइज होते. Every film had Kashmir, the Dal Lake, the Shikara rides, the mountains, Pahalgam ki snow peaks and the little river, and oh my God, it was like endless. And I was just, as a child, I was, because I was grew up to be such a nature lover, I would most of the time remain in my dream world, and Kashmir would be the one place I would dream about, and I just decided, I don't know how. I knew that you have to go to Pathankot और वहाँ से बस चलती है Kashmir, because a lot of my friends and their families would go to Srinagar for their holidays, summer holidays, whereas my parents always took us to Kulu Manali. But I knew कि पठानकोट जाते हैं लोग और फिर वहाँ से बस या कार में जाते हैं. बस तो जाती ही है. There were no trains, bus goes to from Pathankot. So I decided to run away, and because it was so stupid. Of course, I was brought back middle. Pathankot में पकड़ के मुझे उन्होंने वापस भेज दिया. I never got to see the glimpse of the mountains of Kashmir, but that night that I spent on the railway platform, I tried to find him and I decided to write it. Gulzar sab tells me, "बच्चों आपने वो लिखा कि नहीं?" And I said, "क्या सब लिखा है सब नहीं वो लिखा है." And I knew easy. अगर वो नहीं लिखा ना पहाड़ देखने के लिए घर से भागने की, तो आपका complete नहीं होता है chapter. So finally I got done. I said, "Okay, let me be." अब honesty पे उतर आया तो पूरा ही हो जाए. Let me not hold back. तो फिर मैंने वो 10-15-12 pages का पूरा I described the whole night, how I spent on the railway platform. It was a winter night, January का महीना, and the ladies, second class ladies waiting room where I was kept because they caught me there. Entrance पे पकड़ लिया. They could see a schoolgirl uniform पहने हुए, looks pretty decent. तो क्या है ये? Where is she heading? And I said बस चाहिए, but जम्मू की, फिर वहाँ से श्रीनगर जाना है. So they said आ जाइए अंदर. So they caught me.
But there's also this very scary thing of this worker coming in.
Yeah, I didn't try. I didn't feel scared. I thought I was doing something so elevating. I was going to Kashmir. I didn't feel scared, but there was a moment which could have gone ugly. But I think ऊपर वाला है कुछ वो मेरे साथ ही रहता है. When I go vagabonding and I go on treks and my other hikes and everything I do. Papa I'm a lone traveler, so बहुत किया ये सब. But I think कुछ है, somebody up there is watching and has been watching since the age of 13.
Yeah, but that was amazing presence of mind, and let the people read it for themselves when they get the book. Yeah, but that was absolutely
I won't
that.
review that.
But if Gulzar Saab remembered that the most, you can forgive me for starting with it. Because I remember that the most too. So, the city of Amritsar actually just comes alive. And one can understand because when you were born there, you grew up there, I mean, that's in your soul. But I could help marveling the fact that how even Burma came alive so much in your writings, and when you had not even been there at that time. There were all the stories handed down from your mother, about, and you even wrote a story on that.
Yes.
So would you tell us a bit about, and later of course took your mother there to Mandalay to visit her.
Yes, after 60 years.
Yes, 2001.
Well, I tell you, my family, my father's side is all Punjab. He studied in Lahore, college. He did his masters in English. He taught English all his life in India as well as in the US. My mother's family, grandfather was a criminal lawyer, one of the 3 leading criminal lawyers in Amritsar. Came from Jalalabad, very small village. जहाँ पे स्कूल भी पूरा नहीं था, next neighboring school में वेरोवाल में जाके पढ़ाई complete की, and then he found a very somebody some Lala from Amritsar who had 4 sons but कोई पढ़ाई में interested नहीं था. So he found my grandfather. तो उन्होंने देखा कि बच्चा तो पढ़ाई में बहुत है, तो उसको फिर उन्होंने the Lala then sort of funded all his education, sent him to Lahore, law school and everything. So this is and my grandmother, big social worker, again very educated at that time in the 20s. To be a girl who's matriculate was a big thing at that time. So in my mother's side, the family, my mother's side is also Punjabi family, half Pahari. My nana was a pure Dogri from Kangra. And my mother was born in Burma, Mandalay. She did her schooling in Mandalay in Burma, and during the Second World War, when the Japanese invaded Burma and they started bombarding and then they started these torture camps and everything, that's when the Indians fled Burma. This was the great Indian exodus from Burma, where the people who got left behind, boats nahi mil rahi thi, flights were not, the flights were, I think in a family of like 15, 16 people, they couldn't afford a flight to fly everybody to Calcutta. So the Indians were left behind. Eventually flights bhi band ho gayi, airport bhi bombarded ho gaya, sab kuch hua gaya. They walked over to India, cutting through the jungles of Assam and Nagaland. And this was a journey, treacherous journey, over which took months for them to reach anywhere, in India. So this is I had heard stories about, I say in my book that I never heard, being from a Arya Samaj family, this religious part was rather abstract. We didn't have much fed to us, Ramayana or Mahabharata. I didn't know the characters. Ram Sita, of course, Hanumanji, we know. लेकिन बहुत सा नहीं पता था, क्योंकि वो सिखाया ही नहीं गया. So I do say in my book that my mythology was the stories about Burma as narrated to me by my mother. So this exodus, she would tell me, she also went to a convent, Jesus and Mary convent in Mandalay. She was also brought up by nuns like we were. We went to the Sacred Heart convent, Jesus, Sacred Heart City, right here, Amritsar. So I only heard stories from my mother about her growing up years in Burma. And as I went to college in America, one of the first essays I wrote for my English class was an essay called Little Woman and the Gramophone. My nani, we called her Badi Mummy. My nani, when she had to leave the home, and they were all, putting out with their stuff, she said, "Sab kuch main chhod dungi, but I'm not going to leave the gramophone behind." And she literally carried the gramophone with the horn.
Yeah.
She literally carried it. She carried it, and she said, and she was a small built woman, तो वो story मैंने it's a quasi fictional account in the book called Little Woman in the Gramophone. I want you to read that. And these stories actually formed a major part of my childhood years. But of course, other things filtered in from the neighborhood और वो होता था ना, हम सुनते थे कि सत्संग है, other people would attend, and my father and my mother somehow didn't really attend. हमको भी कभी भेजा नहीं गया. We just had this हवन होता था घर में, and we were taught this abstraction called religion. तो वही उसी से काम हमारा चल गया. And I think pretty much okay because we were open to all religions at one level. I went to a Catholic school. The masjid was just adjoining the house. अजान सुनते थे 4-5 वक्त की और घर में हवन होता था तो सब ठीक ही था. I mean it was all okay. सब एक coexist करते थे. It was fine. It was all accepting. We were not kind of heavy duty about our own religious practices. There was no practice really. टेम्पल कोई फैमिली थी नहीं तो कोई व्रत भी नहीं थे. ट्यूसडे का मंडे का कुछ भी नहीं था. So it was simple. I think it worked.
Yeah, that also stands out. You know, this whole this cultural expanse, this very open-mindedness. I mean, one big influence, of course, one can see is of your school, Sacred Heart Convent, and the nuns and the sisters, and how they would call Amritsar, right?
No.
Amritsar.
They would stop us from speaking in Punjabi. Fine hota tha. So when we are saying Amritsar, as soon as the sister would be passing by, we would turn it into Amritsar. It was a joke among the girls. That was all. Yeah. That's how the word Amritsar comes about from Amritsar. Punjab.
But the influence was so enormous that one chapter Deepti writes that if I hadn't become an actor, I would have become a nun. So which is like I thought the other spectrum totally. So how did that come about? Why did you think if not an actor, the other thing for you is being a nun, and thank God you didn't become one?
I think I wanted my life to be different. While other girls dreamt of finding a nice boy, getting married, having children, and being in the, जो क्या उसको हम गृहस्थ कहते हैं, हमारे 4 जो होते हैं 4 sections of life, ब्रह्मचर्य, गृहस्थ, वानप्रस्थ, and then finally sannyas. I used to call them the grihast. So they were all happy with all that, and somehow I never dreamt of that. Not that I had no qualms against the institution of marriage or anything, but I just felt, but I will do something different with my life. I won't do what everybody is anyways going to do. वो तो है ही, तो मैं तो कुछ अलग करूँगी ना. मेरा तो कुछ life ही अलग होगा, because I dream of a wider, framework. I don't know, a wider horizon. Reach out to more people. Connect with people at a larger level. And then the nuns. I was fascinated by the nuns in Sacred Heart School. We used to be girls, of course, we gossiped also about the nuns.
Yeah,
but
brothers and the sisters.
I had a certain fascination. I would wait for the day जब summer से जब winter clothing में वो लोग ठंड होती थी, जब ठंड शुरू हो जाती. अमृतसर is severely cold city, place. तो वो जब I would wait कि किस दिन वो morning में from all white they will come out dressed in all black, and those two colors have also remained my 2 favorite colors in my wardrobe. I can't help it. I did, get some kind of that influence has always remained. But I used to think, how intriguing is this? That either you live a full life, you reach out to a huge amount of people through your work as an artist, or you just go completely internal, and the journey is different. It's completely internal. It's your spiritual that you are going to pursue. So I was fascinated by both. So that's how I felt that if I don't become an actress, I will become a nun. That's my two paths that I had kind of.
So since we're talking of clothes and colors, I think it's the time I'd request you to read. This also is one of my favorite chapters in your book, The Blue Frog.
Yes.
The two blue frogs, and it really tells of a different childhood altogether. I mean, a lot of people who are growing up today can't possibly even imagine that there would be episodes like these in one's lives, and the value. I mean, we all know when there was little to go by, how precious was those things to us. I think this chapter really explains it very beautifully.
दिवाली जब होती थी तो we all used to get new clothes, ना? Do we identify with that? Yes. Yeah. तो वो एक ritual था दिवाली में. So my mother used to stitch a lot of our frocks, me and my didi, but also a lot of the work would be done by the Sardar tailor, the old Sardar tailor across the street from the house. It was a huge, big house, 4-story, 500 square yards in the middle of the walled city. So there were a lot of these staircases going up and down, and about 17 rooms. But then it was a huge place. Just bachpan mein to huge hi lagta tha aur bhi, but it was one of those houses where you could get lost easily. You could go hide someplace and dhoondte rehte, So I'm talking here about the Diwali, this one Diwali, where my mother has, we are waiting for the Sardar tailor to give us our new frock so we can wear them for the night, for the evening. One Diwali night was particularly eventful. I would later remember it as the blue frock fiasco. I must have been about 7 years old then. In preparation for Diwali that year, Mama had cut out from Women in Home a beautiful picture of 2 little white girls wearing identical frocks. The frocks were a rich, deep blue with gathers at the waist. Dainty white lace frills hung off the edges of the collars and sleeves. Mama wanted the exact same blue frock stitched for Didi and me this Diwali. She had a very fine piece of white muslin lying in the wooden almirah, which she decided to get dyed a brilliant blue. The muslin was pulled out from the cupboard one afternoon and taken to the rangwala, who dyed it the same blue. Mama carried the magazine with her to show Color Singh. In my mind, वो rangwala को मैंने नाम दिया हुआ था Color Singh. To show Color Singh exactly what she desired. As blue as this, she told him. Nothing less. It's called Prussian blue. Yes, he assured as if he understood the Prussian. Okay. Then the old Sardar tailor from across the house was called in. I want the exact same pattern, she said, placing the magazine in front of him. The old man got down to work immediately, Diwali being just a day away. The day of Diwali, I was very excited. Every now and then, I'd run to the thada to check if the frocks were ready. Day turned into evening, and evening came to be night. But this Diwali night, the frocks did not get stitched on time. Though the darzi stayed up till late, working on them, little blue strips scattered all around him. Both Didi and I waited. I remember we didn't light up patakas that year. We simply waited on the thada for the tailor to finish sewing on the hooks and buttons and hemming the sleeves and collars so that we could get to wear our new frocks before the night was over. I walked up to the terrace. हमारे घर के पीछे एक मोचियों का महल्ला था, and I used to call that Mochistan. So these were the cobblers were refugees from Pakistan, and when they came and settled inside the mosque, they were finally, after about a few months, they were politely asked to leave and find their dwellings elsewhere. That's when grandfather opened up the back to the area to the back of the house and said, "आप यहाँ बैठे और आप यहीं पे बस जाइए जो भी है." They made their mud shacks over there. I walked to the terrace and leaned over the edge, looking down at the mochi dwellings. How beautiful their homes appeared, lit with oil lamps, the sound of their nightly dholak, more rigorous, the singing more intense. The mud houses glowed with freshly coated walls, uh, and the white powder motifs painted on the thresholds and around windows. The scene looked like it was out of a picture book. Yet, despite the lamps and the rangoli and the music, there was something sad about this Diwali night. On our terrace, we had not lit the candles. As the night wore on, the festivity around us began to fade. The firecrackers that had lit up the sky a while ago, creating a fantastic backdrop for the minarets of the mosque, had dwindled to a handful of flashes here and there. Children around the neighborhood finished bursting the last of their crackers for the night and were now going back inside their homes. This was the quietest Diwali for us girls. The thunder of explosions and dazzle of lights had died down. Only one yellow bulb still glowed, the old Sardar Ghazi sitting on his wooden stool, working away at his modest establishment, giving the finishing touches to our frocks by hand. His was the last shop still open in the street. Both Didi and I were quiet. Mama stood at the thara with us, sharing our disappointment. All the iron and wooden shutters of the shops on our street had clanged shut, a finale to the Diwali night. We came back inside the house, time now to change into our pajamas and get into bed. This Diwali night was gone forever from our lives, uncelebrated. But suddenly, there was a knock on the phatak. Without pausing to think, I ran to open the main gate. I perched on my toes to push up the iron latch so that the small gate could be released open. In my heart, I knew whoever was knocking on our door at this hour could only be God sent. Sure enough, there he was, the old Sardar Ghazi standing in the dark, his face frayed and tilted to one side, both his arms stretched out. My eyes lit up at what I saw. Our very own Messiah, his grey beard and white turban glowing in the light of the street lamp. The Saviour himself. In his hands he held two hangers on which hung frocks of the most brilliant blue I'd ever seen. The old tailor's face had a faint smile of regret and benediction at the same time. I looked at the frocks and then at him. Didi came up behind me. There we were, two little girls, misty-eyed, gaping at the old man who stood Jesus-like, blue color dripping from his palms. Mama quickly changed us back from the pajamas into our new blue frocks that Diwali night. We were the last two girls up on a terrace, lighting firecrackers, invoking the gods, illuminating the dark skies. Thank you.
Who would think, a child like this in these times? So, this is one question I wanted to ask you. Supposing you were given a chance to relive your childhood, to again be a child, would you want to be a child in that same era in which you grew up, or would you want to be a child now? That so much has changed. I mean, they're like two different worlds. Which do you think is a better era for children to grow up?
I have thought of that often, that what if I was a kid now? Yeah, but I would have, I would still say I would prefer to be a kid when we were children. At that time, because we were out in the open, we were living a life close to nature, we were living, we were playing games, we were stepping out, we were, kids from the neighborhood, would gather, we were playing hopscotch and, whatever those games were, sitapu and all those things. And, we were going to Kulu Valley for our summer holidays. Father would be reading a book, Mama would be painting on her oil sheet. That childhood was so precious, and my father was addicted to taking long walks, so with both of us in tow, Didi and me. There are so many pictures of, I still feel that was healthy. I would not like to spend my childhood in front of the screen or the phone. I mean, I want to run away from that cell phone. I want a life free of the cell actually. I'm thinking, I'm conniving to find a way out, किसी को hire कर लेती हूँ, कोई 20 साल का कोई बच्चा होगा, उसकी आंखों पे इतना जोर नहीं होगा, मेरी आंखों पे जोर पड़ता है. So maybe I can tell that youngster to handle everything for me and just tell me कि क्या करना है, कहाँ जाना है, कहाँ नहीं जाना है. So I would, but in terms of discovering life as you go along, each year brings new information, new realizations. Who wants to know everything at age 8 or 7 or 6 and 3? Oh my God, I don't want to get it all from the screen, from my laptop. No, but that is one aspect. But then, of course, information, so much knowledge, so much information. I'm addicted to looking at documentaries on. I just go to YouTube. I love YouTube. I count on YouTube for everything. कुछ दिमाग में आया, I go to YouTube. I ask Siri or whatever, just a question, and that documentary is up there. That information is up there, and then I get engrossed. I read about writers and interviews of so many other artists, and I can see the whole world sitting on my couch. Yeah, I can just visit. So there's advantage and disadvantage. But childhood, no way. Childhood वैसे ही चाहिए, जैसे होना चाहिए, वैसे था.
Absolutely, I agree completely. So there are again two threads which start on the book. One is, of course, the little dots like I talked about films, but I'll come to that later. Before that, the other thread is every few pages, someone with a bit of lunacy pops up. There is a madman of Manali. There is another madman who caught your leg.
My bridge. My coat killing.
Yeah, your coat killing. That also. And finally went on to also.
That woman at the end of the gully.
Yes.
In one of the gullies of Kolkata. My coat killing. There was a fellow called Pa. Everybody would just call him Pa. Pa means brava. Yeah. In Punjabi it means brother. Yeah. And so, वो भी था lunatic. He was finally sent to the institution, the asylum, Amritsar Medical Hospital. He was finally admitted there. But then I also my school friend who
yes, your
kind of very brilliant, very brilliant girl, wonderful person, so talented. But I saw her slip over to the other side. I think it genetically था, and then also at that time, because we didn't understand her sexual preference was different, we didn't understand her, so we found her behavior strange, so that also impacted. I remember being very impacted by her mental state, and because she suffered from kind of schizophrenia. We didn't know the term at that time, but we didn't know the term lesbian or schizophrenia. One had to study all this. But yeah, I mean, to a point that when I went and when I studied in America and I joined college, City University, I chose to study abnormal psychology as one of my subjects. Of course, painting, art was I majored in fine arts, but I also studied American theatre, astronomy, and psychology.
And of course, films keep popping up. Right from, I was really fascinated to read that your grandfather watched a movie every day. Every single day. There were 3 theatres in Amritsar, and 365 days of the year, one box would be reserved for him. In some theatre or the other, where he would walk in and see films.
No, Ajay, no. Yeah, he was, because of his being a criminal lawyer, he had all this rickety day, fighting cases and murder और कई कुछ होता था. मतलब गांव खेड़ों में से लोग आते थे, बैठते थे घर पे आके. They would stay for days together in the Chandravali house, waiting for Pandit ji to solve their tariq pehli and all that. So he would walk. He had 3 boxes reserved in 3 theatres around the house. And after coming, at the end of the day, he would walk into one of the theaters with Mulchan, उनका मुंशी भाई, मूलचंद अंकल बोलते थे उनको, उनके साथ किसी थिएटर में जाके बैठ जाते, 15-20 मिनट, 10 मिनट या जो भी, थोड़ा सा किसी वो फिल्म देखी हुई होती थी, उसका थोड़ा सीन कुछ और देख लिया, just to relax, and then he would walk back home, you know, discussing the film, the plot. Mulchan uncle and his Bauji would be discussing and come back home. So this I came to know from an uncle of mine, and I was like so thrilled. I said, really? Are you serious? Really? Was that my grandfather wanting to be in a cinema hall, sitting and watching a film? Never with his wife, always with Mulchan uncle. So I mean, you know, it was, I mean, I told myself, so it's okay. I mean, if I'm drawn to cinema and I want to pursue films, so big deal. I mean, my grandfather was watching it. My mother wanted to be an actress. My mother was fascinated by Betty Davis, Devika Rani. In Burma, you know, in Burma they had all these English films they would see. तो वो सब था मामा का भी. I've seen her do play का rehearsal करते हुए मैंने उनको देखा. Then हमारे एक इंदु भैया थे.
Yes,
My his son.
They are actually look-alike.
He was a look-alike. Yeah, there's a picture of him. You'll be able to tell. Yeah, he looked like Devana, and he वो जिद करके बॉम्बे आए. उन्होंने कुछ फिल्मों में काम किया, of course not as a hero, but he got some roles. He did pursue acting. बहुत लड़ झगड़ के अपने पेरेंट्स को मना के कैसे भी करके वो आए, and he was always keen that, you know, that I would one day उनका ड्रीम मैं पूरा करूँगी. He was he did. I mean, when I was writing that chapter, I said, actually, Indu Bhaiya had that dream for me also. He told me, क्या टाइम वेस्ट करिए इधर उधर संगीत नाट्य अकेडमी में यहाँ वहाँ जाना, सीधे बॉम्बे जा and go and meet people like Vimal Roy, Gurudutt. Of course, they were not there at that time. So I met the Rishikesh Mukherjees and Pashu Bhattacharya's of the industry. Yeah. You know, yeah.
As an uncanny that your visit to Jallianwala Bagh had such a deep impact on you, and your first film was Jallianwala Bagh.
Yes. I didn't know. I mean, of course, I was about I think 11 or 9 or 10 or 11 when Pitaji, my father, I would always call him Titi, Titi and Mama, they took us to Jallianwala Bagh. सुनते ही थे Jallianwala Bagh Jallianwala. I thought garden ही होगा ना बाग. तो वहाँ जब गए, it was graveyard, most depressing patch of in the city, in the walled city, most disturbing. उसका एक माहौल था वहाँ का, which was very strange, and of course then my father explained to us. I think he was waiting for us to grow up a little to tell us about the massacre. बचपन में तो हमें massacre का partition का भी stories नहीं सुनाते थे. ये पता था partition हुआ, लाहौर से यहाँ आ गए अमृतसर, and Japanese invasion हुआ बर्मा में, तो exodus हुआ Indians का. So there's displacement is in my family. Displacement is a continuous story, and I think it didn't take much for my parents to really decide to leave India and go to America, but that was for better prospects. Obviously, no trauma there. Yeah, it was a choice. But Jallianwala Bagh, जब देखा तो I wrote about that. पहला impression. Right now you won't find that Jallianwala Bagh. It's been converted into actually a bagh only now. It's beautified and lost. The tragedy is gone out of it. बना दिया कुछ अच्छा सा कर दिया. It shouldn't. These places should not be. And the first film that I sang in Bombay, I played opposite Vinod Khanna. And the script is called Jallianwala Bagh. And I said, wow, it's my hometown, my childhood connect to this place. And so that just happened. It was a coincidence. But I'm so glad that I'm part of that. When you go to the Partition Museum in Amritsar, that उस film का ना एक DVD पड़ा हुआ है. There's Shabana, Parikshit Sani, Vinod Khanna, me. वो एक DVD वहाँ पे म्यूजियम में है और जलियांवाला बाग।
So I'm going to talk about one more chapter, which is mainly as a young girl till I take a leap and go to the puberty part of the book. I want to talk about the 1965 Indo-Pak War, with Dr. Jallianwala. It is so, and it's so beautiful reading that you did not dwell so much about the war, but you talked of, one very, actually almost an amusing episode about how your father was mistaken for a spy, and the Lahore TV and the Lahore radio and the Sunanda radio and the fight between them. So I think if you could talk a bit about that.
Pak War 65, just across, you're Amritsar being a border town, it was just कि यहीं पे जैसे war हुई, trenches were dug up overnight and sirens and announcements कि जैसे ही siren बनेगा सब लोग सब काम छोड़ के trenches में भागो. It was a kind of a drill. We had to practice that. और ऊपर वो jet सावरे jets पाकिस्तान के, they would come, sort of sitting over in the skies, and instead of running to the trenches, we would run to the terrace. We want not to miss out on the drama of war at any cost, तो हम लोग ऊपर भागते, छोटे छोटे बच्चे जो पीछे मोचिस्तान के भी सारे मोची माला के सब लोग तो वो सब ट्रेंचेस में भागते, तो we girls used to run up to see के कहाँ के, everybody, and there'd be other kids on other terraces. You know how the terrace scenario is, तो सब बच्चे ऊपर थोड़े से जो बड़े थे, and looking at, and my father being addicted to reading at night, छत पे सोते थे रोज रात को, और father had to read, पिताजी had to read his book सोने से पहले, तो वो टेबल लैंप जलाते थे, and mama would say क्या कर रहे हो, blackout है, and she would switch it off, and after a while tossing and turning he would switch it off. And mama would jump and switch it off, and then एक दिन हुआ, दो दिन हुआ, of course the flash, the light would fall on the dome of the mosque, which is right there, dome is right there, है ना? तो तीसरे दिन there's a huge mochi malla at the gate, and they are saying कि बाबूजी आपके घर में ना कहीं कोई spy है, जो कि ना लिश्कारे मारता है मस्जिद के ऊपर, बताता है कि ये है अंधेरे में, ये शहर यहाँ है, this is the walled city. So my father had it was fun. We enjoyed the situation. We were like, we were all very sheepishly looking at him कि अब कर लो ना, इनको जैसे बाबूजी हम तो उसको ढूंढ निकालेंगे, वो कोई माइका लाल ये वो कर सकता, हमारे मोहल्ले में कोई हमारे देशद्रोही, that went on one of these days. But we enjoyed. I mean, because as kids, truly, we had much excitement about the war till my father said at the end of it, he said, enough of all this excitement about war. The ceasefire हुआ, he said, now I want you to go, drive to the border, Khenkaran, and actually get a. Mama said, why would you do that? लड़कियों को वहाँ ले जा रहे हैं, वहाँ पे बच्चों को दिखाने के लिए. It will be not a good sight, He said, they've enjoyed enough of this, now they should know the reality of it. So he drove us there.
Your cousin also there in the border.
My cousin brother Kamal Bhaiya, he was posted in Khenkaran. So उनको मिलने के बहाने या वो हमें फिर दिखाते कि क्या हुआ कैसे हुआ. So that 20-day war was why I've written about what war I guess I just read, and that will be the last.
Okay, can you do that and then come to your the section. Yeah.
I'll just after all that excitement about the jets and all that. No, let me not read. Let me just go to let me not read this. I can just tell them.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, so in New York, I have a friend from Pakistan. Her name is Meenu Munawwar. So we are going to college together. We are in the same classes together. English, art, psychology, वो कर रहे हैं हम लोग. तो we are sitting and discussing कि तेरे को याद है, हाँ मुझे याद है, हम लोग बच्चे थे, हम लोग भी. So the experience for children of that war was so identical, whether it was on the Amritsar side of the border or the Lahore side of the border. It was so identical, it was uncanny. I mean, whatever she would narrate, I would feel, हाँ, ये तो हम करते थे ऐसे. And I said, हाँ, तो हम तो भी यही करते थे. So that thing. And then we are sitting and we are, one girl is from India, one is from Pakistan. We are sitting across, on 68th Street and Lexington Avenue and saying, why war? Why all this? Life is such a beautiful thing. Why all this? Why this? Why these killings and this? That was the kind of finale I had written about Pakistan.
Okay, so to take a bit of a leap, then there's the coming of age section when childhood memories come to teens.
Yeah.
And very honestly, Deepti has talked about her crushes also.
One.
Okay, one.
No, 1, 2, 3. One crush.
Blue-eyed boy is one crush.
Oh, that was not a crush. That was like a little more.
Okay, more than a crush. There's a crush, there's more than a crush.
Yeah, I mean, I imagined that I was in love. Second, the blue-eyed boy, I imagined that I'm in love. But of course, it didn't go any place because I just left. We just migrated. So we didn't even get to hold hands. But the first crush, I've written about that. And I'm imagining that boy comes riding on his motorbike. और इधर एक boys college है कुछ हमारे घर के सामने से on the street. I see him and I imagine कि ये मेरी वजह से यहाँ से निकल के जाए. I was sure. I was like sure कि because of him. So I would kind of start to look out for him. कि इतने बजे यहाँ से निकल के जा रहा है. And I'd imagine कि one day he will stop me on the street if he runs across me. He will ask me my name and he will tell me his name and we get chatting a bit, तो बात होगी कुछ शायद. And I would imagine उसका नाम क्या होगा. So just keep imagining. And then one day, nothing happened of course. One day I'm coming back from a morning walk with my father, and I see on the first Delhi story big makan, एक वो है boys hostel kind of thing, and I see him standing there doing nothing. And I said, oh God, doesn't it have some dreams? Crush the kick. So, in a jiffy, I was completely got over and it was a thing of the past.
But when I read that line about this boy on the motorbike doing the rounds, I just thought of Cheshire Badur and Farooq Sheikh on the bike doing the rounds on the road. It was like amazing. I don't know whether you felt deja vu when you were doing the cheating, but my mind immediately went there. Yeah, and so there were other ways of discovering boys by calling up the boys' homes and then saying wrong number when the boys picked up the phone.
No, we would just randomly. We got, हम इतने बड़े हो गए थे कि we would start getting curious about boys. But किसी से बात ही नहीं करनी, कुछ जान पहचान के थोड़े से among family friends, some boys, they were all like brothers only. Friends, brother is like your brother. So, so what we girls would do, at a certain time in the afternoon, when dad would be away to college, mama was also gone for school. She was teaching then. So we would dial. Of course, I was the youngest. There was Didi and Didi's friends, and there was Muni, a year or two older than me. So dial करके कोई नहीं random number. If a male voice with a good English accent would pick up the phone, and they would start, the girls would start chatting. तो phone ऐसे पकड़ाते, एक dial phone था ना, तो ऐसे पकड़ा के और सुन रहे हैं आवाज. So कोई my sister or her friend Muni कोई कुछ बात करने की कोशिश करते थे. Then if some आंसू कोई आवाज, कोई बुरा आदमी है, कोई कुछ फालतू का एक्सेंट कोई बोल रहा है कुछ भी, then we would say sorry, wrong number.
So sad. No one can do this these days of cell phones and true callers. And you've always been in films also, more the rebellious woman. And there's one chapter talks a lot of eve teasing, which I think every girl in the north who has travelled by public transport could relate to. the groping and the kind of misbehavior that you see in the North. And then you had this whole thing called the Elbow Crusade.
Yeah, that's a chapter. Yeah,
It's a chapter also where you.
Yeah, because when you travel in bus or wherever, if you're standing in a queue, कहीं तो वो जो आप you know I read you about it, yeah. You know, hands groping, you bus में तो आपके पीछे चिपक के खड़ा हो जाता था. That kind of experience every girl has had. In India, तो every girl's experience is that, and it's ugly. And I've written about that ugliness. I call it the Elbow Crusade. I try to write it in a little tongue-in-cheek manner so that it would make it a little easy to read. Otherwise, it was horrible. Growing up in the North with the male gaze of the Punjabi men. Sorry, but that's how it was. So I talked about that. And Elbow Crusade, because फिर क्या होता था कि so instead of like this, you have to keep the people not touching your body. You would hold your bag and you would be like this. Your elbows would be jutting out. I mean, it was so sad. I think it was the saddest chapter in my book because that didn't give you kind of hated the North Indian men. You ended up hating the way they looked at girls, the way they, just by their looks only, how it made you feel that not nice.
I could really relate. It was 3 years of traveling in Delhi buses to college.
You can imagine.
I was in tears every other day. One would be.
Even in
just
cinema
remember.
halls, कहीं भी कोई हाथ लगा रहे हो, it was.
Yeah, it really was. Anyway, to come back to your, it was also time you became aware of looks and very sweet chapter. Everywhere there's a mirror, you just backtrack and look at the mirror and then go ahead.
I want to read a bit. It's the hat stand in the veranda that I write about. I'll just read it. Times had changed. I was now a young girl, no more little. The hat stand that kept a close watch over my stepping into puberty stood in the pillared veranda more towards Mama's room, against the wall facing the veranda. It was once too high for me to reach and would take me years before I would get the first glimpse of myself in the mirror. During my baby years, it would see a glimpse of my confused little head. When Piti had me in his arms, shaving with his right hand and holding me with his left. When Mama occasionally glided in from somewhere, my face would be swept away from its mercurial surface. Then I was on my own 2 feet, trotting forward, mostly taking tiny steps against my will, as if someone was poking little fingers in my back. Then there's the time I'm dressed in a frock, holding Dini's hand, ready to go for a day out with Mama and Didi. When I was small, I tried several times to stand on my toes and get a glimpse of my face, but it was far from my reach. My foot slipped several times as I tried to lift myself on that rod. Initially a fringe and 2 eyebrows appeared in the mirror, no more. But this much was okay for now. At least I could see my French cut was intact. I shuffled some hair in the front, brushing them down with my fingers over my eyes, still not visible at that height. As I grew a little older, I'd be able to look into the mirror by standing on the rod. I'd prop up on the hat stand and stare for long moments, admiring myself, asking, mirror, mirror on the hat stand, am I a pretty girl? That mirror was perceptive for sure. It studied me while I studied myself. My feet perched up on the horizontal bar to reach my reflection in its freckled face. I considered the angle at which I looked best. I turned my face in all directions in order to ascertain that I looked good from every angle. I thought I had beautiful brown eyes, Not that anyone had particularly told me about that. It was just this inner thing. Whenever Mama called for me and I ran barefoot across the courtyard to her room, I'd never forget to step up at the hat stand for just a split second for a quick, all okay look at the person in the mirror. Mama had noticed this ritual several times, but pretended she hadn't. She didn't want to make me feel self-conscious. I suspect my mother saw a whole lot of herself in her younger daughter. Around 11, I remember each time the doorbell rang, I'd hoist myself up on the wooden rod and with a tilt of my head, shoot an angular glance in the mirror to make sure I looked presentable before answering the door. I'd always make it a point to tilt my head a bit at that particular sadhana angle, where she looked her best, making sure that the same effect was achieved in my mirror as well. But the girl in the mirror always seemed startled by her undefined looks. Of course, I never forgot to smile. How come no one had noticed my smile? Couldn't it? I mean, it could change the world, right? Sadhanas did. I didn't just stand and stare into the mirror. I talked to the person inside it always. The hat stand stood there with the patience of saints, taking into account each flickering indication of bloom on my face, the first flush of youth, the recording each moment of doubt, anxiety, disappointment, and joy. Come to think of it, if the hat stand could speak, it would blurt out many secrets that I kept to myself and regularly shared only with the mirror. When at 16, I wore a sari for the first time for Brian Uncle's wedding, a lime beige cotton, and stood in front of the hat stand, pinning my pallu to the shoulder. I smiled into the mirror, and I swear, for once, it smiled back. Years later, when the house in Amritsar got demolished, I let go of everything else but just the hat stand I retained, and it stands today framed by snow peaks in my little art studio in Himachal.